Alright, Accounting 1 kiddos, let's start 3-2 work together, where we're going to continue working on our journalizing a little bit in our new multi-column journal. So once again, I'm going to scroll down here and read the directions first. It says Norma Dirks is the owner of Dirks Copy Center. We had her in yesterday's lesson. And we're going to use the following information provided to journalize the transactions, continuing with our next blank line. Our source documents are abbreviated as follows. A check is C and a memorandum is M. So once again, we have our 3 transactions we're going to journalize. We also have our chart of accounts that we can reference should we need to know what accounts are in a transaction. So I'm going to close this up and put this up and out of the way. Couple of things I want to just point out here. When we do our work together, a lot of times what will happen is they will have our work that we completed yesterday in our 3-1 work together. So you can see here's our 2 transactions that we journalized. We're going to continue on with those and journalize 3 more transactions for April. So we're going to pick up on our 3rd line, and it says our first transaction for the day is on April 5th. We bought supplies on account from Supply Mart. So remember, this one is a little different in and of the fact that if we bought supplies on account, note that both of those 2 accounts are going to need to be in a general debit or general credit column. There doesn't say anything about us using sales or having a cash debit or a cash credit. Cash wasn't exchanging hands in that transaction. So that means that this specific transaction is actually going to take 2 lines. So let's practice that. We are on the 5th of April, and since this is not the first line of our journal, we actually just get to put the 5. And then remember that we always put our debit first. You never start with your credit, so you need to recognize which of these is going to be debited. So read the transaction carefully. It says we bought supplies on account. So remember that supplies is an asset, and since we bought supplies, it's going up. So supplies is going to be our debit. So we put supplies in here. We put our document number, which is M1, and we put the debit of $600. Now, because, again, there's no sales and no cash, we go down to our next line where we're going to put our credit account. We do not need to put the date again, and we do not need to put the source document again. Remember, when we leave those 2 blank, what that signifies to us is that these 2 lines are one transaction. So our credit is going to be for accounts payable dash Supply Mart. And if you weren't sure what that account was, you could always check your chart of accounts and you would see it under liabilities, accounts payable dash Supply Mart. And then we just tab on over and put our $600 credit in. And that is our first transaction for the 5th of April. Our next transaction says on April 7th, we paid cash for insurance of $500, check 2. So again, we do not need April, we just need the day, which is the 7th. Since we paid cash for insurance, what is going to go in our account title? That would be prepaid insurance. Again, if you're not sure, check your chart of accounts. That's very helpful. C2 is our document number, and prepaid insurance is going up with a debit of $500. Then it says we paid cash. So that's recognizing that cash is going down. So we have a credit to cash. I'm going to tab all the way over and put $500 in there. That's journalizing our April 7th transaction. Our last one is on the 9th. So we tab over. It says we paid cash on account to Supply Mart. So what's happening here is, remember, on the 5th, we bought supplies from Supply Mart, but we didn't pay for them. So we created a liability for ourselves. 4 days later, we pay Supply Mart. So our liability is actually going down with a debit. So once again, we're going to put in accounts payable dash Supply Mart, C3 for check 3, and that's going to be debited for $300. And then we are going to credit our cash. So the one thing that I just want to point out to you, because some people tend to do this and it's really not the way to go about it. Some of you when we first started, would have said, we have 3 transactions, so I'm just going to number 5, 7, and 9. And then you would have realized that you had an extra line. So you cannot just put your dates in right away and then start going down and doing your transactions, because remember that some transactions are going to take up 2 lines. So if you do that, you're going to get off, and then you're going to have just a mess on your hands. So always journalize one transaction at a time in chronological order. Don't go putting all your dates in and then thinking that you can go through and do all of your account titles. That's going to be a mess. So don't do that. Just go chronologically, transaction by transaction. Okay? So that is our 3-2 work together. You can head on over and complete your 3-2 on your own. Don't forget about your application and your terms and questions for this section.